Since rising prices are a key concern for Latinx Americans, it is perhaps absolutely no surprise to anyone at home to see that only 26% of Latinx adults approve of Joe Biden's performance as president. Among young adults, it's even worse, a 21% approval rating. And for American adults overall, it's only 33%. That focus on lowering prices is one of the reasons why President Biden is speaking at a historically black college in the state of North Carolina today to promote legislation to strengthen U.S. manufacturing and lower inflation. But will this legislation make it through the Congress? And will it be enough to address voters' concerns before the November midterm elections? Joining us now, Juanita Tolliver, Democratic strategist, Susan Del Percio, Republican strategist. And ladies, Juanita, I'll start with you. How much could voter concerns about inflation and supply chain issues affect the midterm elections coming up very, very soon?
Zerlina, it's the entire ball game. And since President Biden assumed office, it's the one thing that I said he needed to do is make people's lives tangibly better. Make sure their day-to-day experience is better under him than the last guy, because that's what's going to ride on the midterms as well as 2024. And right now, I think the White House is starting to recalibrate. They recognize that people's needs aren't being met. They recognize that their historic economic gains are being eaten up by historic inflation and rising costs in food and housing and energy. And so now I think they're going to try to take bite-sized efforts to combat inflation. We see the president releasing oil every day. We see him requesting waivers for ethanol 15 gas, but there's still more they can do, whether legislatively on top of the Bipartisan Innovation Act, putting forth another push to get an extended child care tax credit, which we know lifted millions of children and their families out of poverty, as well as efforts like canceling student loan debt, which he has already promised to do. It's those efforts that will make sure people are experiencing something different, seeing something different in their bank accounts in real time.
It's such an important point. It's like we've talked a lot about messaging and what's the right message for Democrats for particular communities, but it feels like the tangible results, that kind of helps you with your messaging problem. And Susan, let's talk about Latinx voters specifically. What do Democrats need to do to address these pocketbook issues in general and the concerns that these voters are having, like gas prices and the cost of everyday items that you need, shortages on baby formula? I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, Zerlina, I've been fortunate to see quite a few polls and focus groups regarding the Hispanic community and how they're feeling towards these very issues. And one thing I can say is that they are putting the blame on Democrats. What they want to see are clear results. I am not saying this is correct, okay? So for the record, I'm not saying this is right. But there is a perception out there that Donald Trump was better on the economy. And that is just, it's borne out in the numbers and it's borne out in the facts. Of course, there wasn't a supply chain issue the way it was when Donald Trump was president. There are a lot of issues. And frankly, when we talk about inflation, I think the president has to be a little careful here, President Biden, because he can't combat inflation. He can do other things to lower the costs for everyday for people, like what Juanita was talking about, like a tax credit, like student debt forgiveness. But really, this issue of inflation lies with the Fed. They are going to raise rates. It's been said that instead of 0.25%, they're moving it to 0.5%, which will cause other issues down the road. But these are things that only the Fed can do. My other concern, and this is messaging, is that the idea of inflation is very 30,000 feet. When you start asking questions about the cost of everyday items, that's what the administration and Congress should be focusing on, how to address the costs of everyday items. And I do believe that the president's message on expanding competition is a good one. It's something that kind of goes to the core of American values. So it wouldn't be surprising to see him use that a little bit more, because, again, that also talks about everyday items, not this big idea of inflation.
So Susan said something really, really interesting right then, where she said that the focus groups that you've seen, they're blaming the Democrats, and you noted that that's not correct, which I think is important, because Republicans, they're supposed to be governing too, they're not. So that's sort of the premise we're all acknowledging as a fact before we start this conversation. So that's important to say. But to that point, Juanita, should Democrats spend any time at all messaging around the fact that Republicans are not governing at all, right? They're not participating in coming up with legislative solutions to tackle some of these rising costs and inflation. Is that a waste of time? Do they just focus on what they're doing and skip over the fact that the reason why nothing is passing through Congress is not just, Joe Manchin and Sinema, but that all of the Republicans are really out to lunch in terms of governing and passing legislation?
I think it is absolutely a good use of time, Zerlina, because what we know is that Republicans have been on the sidelines. They were on the sidelines with major components of the Build Back Better Act. They were blocking it every step of the way. And Democrats absolutely need to call that out. And not just that, think about the American Rescue Plan, which a lot of people are still benefiting from, and our economy is still benefiting from. And Republicans sat on the sideline there. So Democrats have no shortage of examples to pull from, and they absolutely should call out Republicans. And we know they're starting to do that with Rick Scott's latest plan for American Rescue, where they have tested it with focus groups that say this is highly unpopular to talk about ending Medicare, ending Social Security, and ending the Affordable Care Act. This is something that they need to drill down on and do it at the local level so that people can see the real impact, see the real devastation that Republican power in Congress would have on their communities. So spend time on it, Democrats, if you're watching. Spend a lot of time on hitting Republicans.
Juanita, Susan, I want to ask you this question about abortion, because one of the things that this conversation has made me think about is the fact that Republicans are harming folks on the state level. So this week, 2 states, Oklahoma and Kentucky, they ended legal abortion in those states. In Oklahoma and Kentucky, abortion is effectively not legal right now, today. Should every Democrat be screaming that from the rooftops? That seems like something that would resonate with younger voters, since legal abortion has existed for 50 years, which is more years than I have been alive, Susan.
Yes, and it is not more years than I have been alive. So, but I think it's an important issue. I think timing matters, and it does matter at the state level, but let's not forget we're going to see a very important decision come in from the Supreme Court in late June or potentially early July on this issue, where Roe versus Wade will be probably deemed null and void without overturning it, just giving the rights to the states. So that would be an ideal time to rally, because that will be the first time in this country's history that a right will be taken away from half of the population. So I think that is the time to really hit this message home.
Juanita and Susan, 2 of my favorite people to talk to about politics. We'll have you back as we do this analysis through this midterm election year. It's incredibly important to the future of American democracy. Thank you again. Please stay safe. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.